Waiting one more moment. Oh, now we're live. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Portland State University Art and Social Practice Program's annual conference, Assembly 2021. Thanks so much for joining us. This year, our social practice conference comes to you in the form of a live television station. So what you are about to experience is not just your average Assembly conference, it's Assembly TV. So take a look at the official Assembly TV guide, which you can find the link in the chat. And don't forget to read your social practice horoscope on page 26 for guidance on which events to attend. Harold, would you mind putting the Assembly TV guide link in the chat? Thanks.
It's in there.
Okay, cool. And we've got a great week of programming ahead of us, a boxing class, a plant show and tell, a stunt show, and much, much more. So tune in Monday through Friday, 12 to 6 p.m. Pacific time. That's 3 to 9 Eastern time. And each assembly event will be recorded and put up on our YouTube channel for you to enjoy again. So if you're new to Zoom, you can check out the link in the chat for a brief overview. And finally, a note about accessibility. The daily graduate lectures will have a live ASL interpretation. So if you plan to utilize ASL interpretation for these events, please join us in Zoom rather than YouTube. So without further ado, I present to you our first event of the day, which is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. School Museum of Contemporary Art International Acquisition Committee. And we have Illia and two other guests. So today we are starting the day with the International Acquisition Committee. It is a project by Illia Yakovenko, an artist from Ukraine at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School Museum of Contemporary Art. As the committee, Illia and King School students collectively pick international art for the KSMoCA collection. During the session, Illia is going to talk about their first acquisition together with the artists who made the artwork.
Cool, thank you, Bree, for the introduction. And yeah, so I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Illia Yakovenko. I'm an artist originally from Ukraine, more specifically from Eastern Ukraine, and I'll share my screen right now. So I'll give a small presentation where I will provide you with some context about what is the International Acquisition Committee, and then during the presentation, I will show the process of how we, with King School students, picked an artwork for the collection. And then later I will reveal the name of the artwork and the artists, joined us today. And so we'll have so they will have an opportunity to present their work, and yeah, you'll have an opportunity to ask them questions later on. So do you see my screen? Just to double check. Do you see the presentation? Can someone, no presentation, you don't see it. Really, you don't see the slides, nothing.
It says you're sharing your screen, but it's blank.
It's blank. Okay, that's bad. Give me one moment. I will try.
Maybe you just shared the wrong window.
I don't think so. I will try it once again. But thank you for the input. Share. What about now? Do people see the? Okay,
yes.
Perfect. Thank you all for support. Right. So first and foremost, what is International Acquisitions Committee? And this is a project that I started at Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School Museum of Contemporary Art, or KSMoCA, back in 2020. And basically the idea is that I, together with the King School students, learn about artworks from like international art, about artworks from all around the world. And the idea is to learn about artists, about the artworks, and then engage with the artwork in some form. So to have some interactive experience in a way to try to reproduce the work, or reproduce the technique that artists used originally to produce the work. But besides the reproduction part, the other important part to me is production of meaning. So we are not only reproducing meanings, but we also try to think about what stories the artworks tell about the places they come from, and at the same time, how we can relate this artwork to the place where we at right now, which is Portland and the United States. And so, yeah, I think that's an important component. And later on during the presentation, I will share more information about how I kind of try to achieve this interactivity and production of additional of new meanings, right? And creating this form of like transformative encounter that the artwork and interaction with the artwork can potentially produce. And so a little bit about King School Museum of Contemporary Art. For those people who might not know about it, and Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School Museum of Contemporary Art is a project that was started in 2014 by Lisa Jarrett and Harold Fletcher, and it's basically a contemporary art museum in an elementary school, but at the same time, it is conceptually framed as a social practice, social engaged art project. And they have a huge program where like students interact with art and artists in different ways. They curate exhibitions. They have different programs, but just to give you some context in which the idea of International Acquisitions Committee emerged. And I think what was important to me as a person not from the United States, right, who arrived in the United States only like 2 years ago, is to bring in this international perspective also to the KSMoCA. Next, so I spent about, like for the past year, I was an artist in residence at KSMoCA, and alongside other 8 incredible artists, I had a possibility and opportunity to work with King School students, to work at King School and specifically to develop the International Acquisitions Committee project. And in the framework of this residency, I gave 3 talks, 3 presentations to the King School students, and also had one session where I had opportunity to interact with students in more, to get some certain feedback from the students, not only present the work, but also give opportunity to the students to vote for an artwork that then eventually is supposed to wind up to be part of the collection of KSMoCA. All right, and I will tell a little bit about the presentations that I gave during Arts in Residency, because I feel like I laid out the conceptual components of the International Acquisition Committee quite well during in this presentation. So first presentation that I gave was in 2020, at the end of 2020, and in this presentation I told about myself. I told to the students about myself, about my own childhood, about the place I come from, and about Ukraine, about Mariupol, about Eastern Ukraine specifically. And I also shared a collection of my own collection of pins, of Soviet pins, badges, postcards, and coins. And to me, it was really important to give this general impression to the students, right? That as people, as human, we oftentimes collect things, and this is part of our like human, like mundane in a way existence. And so, just apparently, or like my assumption is maybe the students also have are collecting some things. So I just wanted to show that the museum like create this connection between the museum and how we as humans also collect things, but also like how these things, these objects can tell stories about the places where they come from, about the time when they were produced, right? And so in my particular case, on the bottom right side, you can see a pin that I'm showing, and the pin is a sailboat on the foreground, and then a factory in the background. And this is the pin from my hometown, basically. And to me, it was really interesting to tell the story how the in the Soviet Union, the idea was that the leisure and industry do not contradict to each other, and so people can sail boats, enjoy the beach, enjoy sports at the same time having the industry in the background. And then there is an excerpt from a movie, from a documentary from also 1970s, and it's again from my hometown. And then in this documentary, in the still, you can see an image of a factory, and again dinghies in the foreground. And then on the left side, on the bottom left side, there is me who is standing next to my friend, next to a sailboat, because when I was a child, right, in Mariupol, I was also part of the sailors club, and so I was like racing dinghies, and so it's really interesting how all of these things are intertwined. So the pin, the factory, you know, the images, but then also my own biography, right? How also like my own experiences being like growing up in Mariupol, in Ukraine, and yeah, being, you know, racing sailboats. Also because, yeah, in a way, it's just curious how all the things can interwoven together. And then during my second presentation, I told about art, my art practice, and more specifically about two projects by the Cooperative for Creative Research Krasnaya Shpana, of which I'm one of the members. Two other members are Olga Shurka-Stup and Alexei Markin. And to me, in this presentation, it was important to show how, through my own practice, I explore the context, in this specific case, the context of the former Soviet countries, the Russia-Ukraine relationships, and, you know, imperial past, and current attempts to decolonize Ukraine, to decolonial practices in Ukraine. And yeah, and so I pinpointed like geographically how my art practice is related to and tells stories about the context I come from, about the sociopolitical context I come from, about the past and the history, but also about the current struggles and current I know challenges that we are in a way facing, and then how we, yeah, how as an artist we again like can tell stories about places we are from. And then in my last presentation, my final presentation, I presented works by other artists from Ukraine who I find inspiring. And again, by this was an example of how other artists from Ukraine tell like their own stories about their work based or depending on their own, I don't know, upbringing, or depending on their own interests, right? And so one of the works on the top left is left corner, Odyssey Donbass, where Diet Symboluk with the other authors, they had conversation with the internally displaced people, basically refugees who fled from Eastern Ukraine from war into other parts of Ukraine. And yeah, they had conversations about, they asked them to tell about the places where they come from and to draw a mental map of this place. And then another work, which is on the bottom left, is what this work is. Yeah, so it's Strawberry and Andreeva by Alftina Kahidze, and this is also like a very personal work about occupation, about people who stayed in the occupation and continue their lives in the occupation. Then on the right side, right top side, you have a project of Peter Menovsky. I took part in this kind of video recreation of a game that Peter played when he was a child in Eastern Ukraine. And to me, it was also interesting, like how, you know, specifically cultural things like from the region we come from exist even like in games. It's like also like cultural in a way form. Yeah, the game as a cultural form. And on the bottom, right bottom image, there's a work by Pavlo Khailo, The Structures of Care. And in this work, he also explores gamification in a way, in the or militarization of games in Ukrainian society, and how they in a way enter the space of schools and the public education. Yeah, because of the war, how, yeah, certain games are becoming like more militarized, and how, you know, young people are basically trained through games to be more like patriotic in a way, but also like, yeah, just militarization of you know, their consciousness through game. And then why isn't, yep, changing slides. And so yeah, so again, to wrap it up, conceptually, first I shared my collection and in general story about how objects can tell stories, right? And then in the second presentation, I told about my own work and how art can tell stories about the context they come from. And then third is how, you know, I just shared other artists' work, again, trying to pinpoint how this work can tell about stories about the place it comes from. and specifically in my case, from Eastern Ukraine, place or from Ukraine in general, but specifically from Eastern Ukraine, the place I was born in and grew up in, and yeah, that I care about. And next, on May 19th, I had a session with the students, with two fourth grades, with two fourth grade classes from King School. It was a remote session, like remote 45-minute session. Alex Manford, or Mr. Monty, who's a teacher at King School, he helped me out a little bit and assisted me during the session. And yeah, and so during the session, I showed the students 3 artworks by Ukrainian artists, and now I'll take more in detail about this artwork, and I will talk more about in detail about these artworks. And so one of the artworks I showed them was "Protection of Plants" by Nikita Kadan, 2014. And in this, for this artwork, he went to Eastern Ukraine, took pictures of building affected by military action, by war in Eastern Ukraine, and then he used them as a background, and as a foreground, he overimposed images of plants. And so I was thinking, again, like coming back to the general conceptual framework of the International Acquisitions Committee and the like pedagogical approach to the usage of art as a source of knowledge, right? So to me, it was interesting first because it talks about the context I come from, right, about Eastern Ukraine, and then in terms of materiality and potential for engagement, it's a very interesting work because it can allow students to practice collage, and so really have a hand-on experience, right, with working or reproducing some technique of how the work was produced, right? But then I was thinking about what way I can relate it and make it more relevant to the context of the United States and specifically Portland, so to the context where the students are, from and where they are at right now. And so one of the ideas that I had when I was having a conversation with students at Portland at Art and Social Practice program at PSU, specifically this idea like was born from the conversation with the Zev Fishlin, alumni of the program. And so they kind of suggested that similarly to what's going on, with war, people are getting displaced and, buildings are being destroyed. Similar thing is happening in the United States through urban renewal and gentrification, because people are also getting displaced and buildings are being destroyed, right? And so on the left side, you can see South Auditorium. This is urban renewal. So this was a district in a neighborhood in Portland that was kind of demolished during the urban renewal in 1960s. And right now it's became part of downtown, right? There is Coin Tower, there is Keller Auditorium, and many other new buildings that are part of the downtown, right? But before that, it was a neighborhood of people, of immigrants from, predominantly populated by immigrants from Eastern Europe, mostly Jewish people and Italians, right? And then it was destroyed, people were displaced. About 400 residents were displaced, basically. And then on the right side, it's Emmanuel Hospital, which also was part of the urban renewal kind of project in 60s and 70s. And this specific urban renewal project displaced about 171 families, Black families, right? Because this is Albanian neighborhood. It was, or it is still, to some extent, core or center of Black culture in Portland. And together with the I-5, with the Emmanuel Hospital and like Memorial Coliseum, right, urban renewal project, huge displacement was and damage was done, right? And it also kind of shows how racially biased and extremely unjust urban planning policies are in the United States, or were and still are. And so, yeah, so what again it tells about the history, but also about the present of the local context of Portland and of the United States. And so with students during the session, I kind of provided them with an opportunity to interact with to create some form of like interactive experience. So I was like thinking about how I can create interactive experience, right? And so I used this Jamboard whiteboard, just a basic tool provided by Google, and I used the in this case a Southern auditorium, right, as a background, and then on the sides there were like images of plants, and so I sent students the link and asked them to drag the plants over the image, and eventually the result was this. So we have the initial picture on the left side, and then the image that students kind of interacted with on the right side, right? And so, and during this interaction, we had the conversations about the what does it mean, and what this image stands for, what is the history behind this image, right? And so this is another image with students. Moving further, next work I presented was Odyssey Donbass, and this work is I mentioned before, right? So artists Darit Cymbaluk with two other artists, they interviewed internally displaced people in Ukraine, and then produced maps and drawings of the places that people had to flee from or leave, right, because of the war and the occupation by the Russian proxy breakaway states. And this project really touched me a lot, because when I saw one of the maps, and you can see this map on the right side, it's a map by Alexei from Makiyivka and Donetsk, and the map of Donetsk is really similar to the way I remember the city, and I spent about 5 years living in the city, and that the city was even part of my life even for longer, until it got occupied. So the last time I went there was in 2014, and so it was really touching, to see this map and to realize that, oh, these are the places I remember, and this person remembers the cities in similar ways to how I do remember the city. I remember like this streets. I remember how I was like walking with the my friends, and like there is a place where there's a street where my friend lived before he also had to flee the city. So yeah, very emotional and very interesting. And so with Keen School students, again, like providing some space for interaction, I used the same whiteboard, and I kind of related the experience of not being able to get to some place because it kind of became inaccessible because of whatever reason. I thought that the pandemic is in a way similar experience, and so I created this board with stickers, and again used a background. In this case, it was a Keen School, so it's it's the Keen School basically in the background, and I asked students questions like, what do they miss? Like what places do they miss in school? What was their favorite activities in the school? And so eventually students answered the questions, and again moved the stickers around the board, and some students said that they miss the park, some miss cafeteria, some miss like the playground. So yeah, it's like it was in a way simplified version of a mental map that I could get done in this 45-minute iteration of the in interaction with the students, and then move to the final work. The final work that I presented is a video work by Anna Serkova and Taras Kovac, The Stone. And in this work, there is the like Taras. This is like a video performance, or a performance made for video. And Taras, dressed as the rock, was kind of moving through space and through the like natural environment space in a way, almost like feeling lost to a certain extent, and then like interacting with this environment, trying to interact with trees, with the nature around him, right? And to me, this work it has like a lot, like very many conceptual layers, but yeah, some of the highlights for me is that how, in ways like a post-Anthropocene work, like post-human work, right? How, in a way, artists try to think of that, like try to think as objects, right? As let's say the rock as a natural object from the environment, and imagine how they can move into space if they are a rock, right? And then another layer to this work is that it's also connected to the Joseph Beuys and to his myth connected to Crimea, which is currently occupied by the annexed by the Russian Federation. So yeah, there is a lot, and eventually we. So yeah, I made the game based on this artwork on this video performance, and so again, I was trying to create the space for students to have an interactive experience. And this game that I designed, I basically took a rock and then make this rock into the character that students could play and move through the space themselves, right? And so, and then later on, we had a voting session and asked students like what artwork they want to see in their collection, and students voted for the stone. And I immediately reached out to the artists, trying to negotiate like how we can inform them that their work was selected, and like if they're interested in cooperation or collaboration. And yeah, and eventually they wrote back to me and they're interested in collaboration. And currently we are still figuring out the terms of the how we can hand over the work to the museum, and the contract and the terms of this of the work becoming part of the King School Museum of Contemporary Art collection. But nevertheless, they already expressed their will that they're interested in this cooperation, and right now they're here. Anna and Taras are in the space. Yeah, welcome them. I think I stopped my presentation. So hi Anna, hi Taras. I will, okay, now you're pinned, that's perfect. I'm very glad that you're here. And now Anna and Taras will introduce themselves and share some information about their work. And also we'll play some excerpts from the work. And I will play it from my computer, so just let me know when I should start playing the excerpts.
Hi Ilya, and hi everyone. We are happy to join this meeting. I'm Anna Sarakovaya, and
I'm Taras Kovach.
And we are artists from Ukraine. Thank you for this presentation and also for this collaboration. And we are very interested. And also we could tell a few words about our work, just to share some information about it. And this work, in this work we refer to project of Joseph Beuys, as Ilya already said. And Joseph Beuys is a famous German artist, and he works also with socially engaged practices and with state of trauma, in post-war Germany. And also he was engaged, so he mixed always art and politics, and he did he's one of the most famous project, 7,000 oaks in Kassel during Documenta in 1982. Yeah, and we refer to this project, but as Ilya already said, we want to put our attention on other hero, and it's a non-human hero, and we are interested to to see this work like from our times, and maybe
what to say? And one of the idea of Joseph Beuys was to put to plant the oak trees and near these oak trees to put also the basalt stone, this stone, and he had an idea to start this project in Kassel and then to move due many cities to Russia. Yes, so. As for me, being in like character of this stone, wasn't. My idea was to have this walk, this wandering. Walk
right.
in
so our idea was to put this stone in somewhere somewhere kind of this frustrating state, and also just wandering through this place in the middle of nowhere, and also it was kind of in work of Joseph Beuys, he has this idea of transforming through transforming environment through engaging people in this process, and it was his kind of positive view of how art could influence people, and also how people could influence environment in positive way. But in our project, we have a little bit other position, and also more we have this more frustrating mood, and but also we are so we refer to this project, but maybe from our position and our time, so in few words, how we could explain this work.
Right, and you mean by this project, you mean the project of Joseph Beuys, right? That he made back in Kassel, in
yes,
the 70s, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So, would you mind if I show some excerpts from the work?
Yeah, for sure.
No? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Sure.
So now I'll show the excerpt, one or two excerpts from the work, and just to give you heads up, the work is. Because of the system or whatever, it might be a little choppy, the work and laggy or whatever. So that's not the original intention, but unfortunately, this is where we at this moment. And so I'll share my screen again, and I'll start playing the video. You have sound, right? So Anna and Teres, you can let me know when I should stop.
Yeah, you could show maybe a few seconds like later.
Yeah, maybe near Oaks.
Yeah.
Okay.
The end of the video.
Mm-hmm. Like from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we could stop because it's
Stop?
yeah, because it's
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll stop share. So I hope it wasn't too slow. Yeah. Yeah, actually, I don't know how to go about it, like how to go further. So do you want to add something about the work, about what we just saw?
Maybe we can add if we have some questions.
Okay, so yeah, we can basically open up the floor for questions, then. And yeah, so folks in the on this Zoom meeting have any questions about the work. The last thing I want to say, as I mentioned earlier, we are like currently figuring out the way we can have the work or get the work in the collection of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary School Museum of Contemporary Art. And besides that, I'm also interested, and we are interested to further collaborate with artists and make sure that the work is not only transferred the way it is already, but also being put in a context and being like contextualized in a way through additional like installation in terms of like providing some additional context and background about the work, about the context the work comes from, about things that, you know, Anna and Teres just explained that are important to them, including Joseph Beuys, including the war and the work of Beuys and how they refer to the work of Beuys, but also what like their vision and how, in a way, they explore the how they're like in dialogue with the work of Beuys and from the contemporary moment, right? So yeah, in a way, we're thinking about how we can make this work more, or in terms of like as part of the collection, more immersive for students in a way, and they'll explain its context, the context it was produced in, and the motivations behind the artist. Yeah, why the work was produced. Okay, so and now I think I'll just open the floor for to the questions from.
I've got a question.
Sure.
Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate that. And I was wondering both, and I might have missed this, how you originally exhibited the work, or how it has been exhibited in the past, and then what your thoughts are about it being exhibited in a grade school context where the primary audience will be 5-year-olds to like 11-year-olds. What your thoughts are about having the work in that kind of context?
Like we exhibited this work. It was like we have display, so like it was just like it played as a movie, but also at the same time Taras did like performative action also like during this like event that we have. So it was like two component, but like in in this situation, I think we could also think how like we are in progress, like we are like in discussion with Illia, because also we want to maybe to see how this place where it could be presented, how it looks like. So we could think together, yeah. But also we like that Illia did this video game, so it would be also interesting, like to work with this artwork later.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. And also just to give you some context, Harold Fletcher is the person who just asked the question is actually one of the founders of the King's School Museum of Contemporary Art. Yeah, and any other questions? Anyone else?
I guess maybe everyone will answer, but the questions starting kind of with you, Illia. And I guess for context, for someone who doesn't have it, Illia is a Fulbright student in the US, so is practicing as a Ukrainian artist in the US. And so I was curious about how you feel this individual project fits into your larger practice, and then also for the artists, how they feel like the term collaborate has come up, but like what it means for you to be collaborating internationally through the internet with your work.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Michael. And I mean, I assume or I suppose that by asking about how the project of International Acquisitions Committee, like as a whole thing, fits in my wider practice. And I think it's definitely for me something like I'm thinking a lot about how I can, on one hand, introduce certain stories about Ukraine in the United States and tell stories like what's going on in Ukraine in the United States, right? And then how at the same time, by working with the people from different communities here in the United States, right? And specifically in this specific case at King's School, right? With students at King's School through the means of education and like some form of knowledge exchange, right? Like thinking about certain how to art, I can tell stories and can share stories and can in a way engage with students, but also not only in terms of like me sharing what's going on in Ukraine, but also by relating all this information to what's going on in Portland, right? What's relevant to the students in Portland, how, and then giving like even more wider like global picture, how all the things that happen in Ukraine or in Portland are interrelated into the global systems of neoliberalism, colonialism, and capitalism, right? How all these events that happen in Ukraine, like war, also, in similar or not similar, different way maybe unfolds, but still, there are things and social inequalities and social injustices that are tied in a way to the similar systems historically, but just unfold in different way, let's say in the United States. So I think there is that. And definitely my general interest in intercommunal, international, and intercultural exchange and work and action and solidarity, like building the systems, exchanging of knowledge, and things like that. And now moving, or I'll pass it to Anna, and there's collaboration, I think was the question.
Or to like direct from Illia's comment to your answering of the question, knowing that Illia's working with all of these things, what does it mean for you to be collaborating with that, those ideas at play?
Like this question for us, yeah, because like we didn't hear very well.
You didn't hear me very well. Is that what you said? I was saying thinking about Ilya's answer, what does it mean for you to be collaborating internationally, knowing what Ilya's intentions are? And if it seems impossible to answer,
I mean, I can try maybe translating it or something, which is, yeah. So I think...
Translate.
Yeah, мне кажется, вопрос в том, что, типа, зная мои мотивы, что как бы для вас является эта коллаборация международная, что как бы какое значение для вас она имеет?
I start with my experience. As for me, I'm also in Kiev. I am a lecturer in National Academy of Fine Arts and Architecture. So I also working with students. And when Ilya proposed to collaborate in such way with his students, we are interested. It is important for us to also to be engaged in such kind of practices and to in such kind of collaboration with the students, with us as being artists and as being practicing artists also and being lecturer, and to combine these two practices, it's for me it is very important as for me, and I think that for Anna also, and so maybe
also we like this project like
with the museum, with in school, public school. It is for us it is very interesting practices. It's a pity, but in Ukraine we have no such kind of projects in educational system. Yeah. So we're happy to collaborate in such way. For us, it is very important to like
to be engaged.
To be engaged with
yes.
with students. With
Cool. Thank you for the answer. Thank you for the question. And people keep telling me that we are running out of time. And so yeah, it was a great conversation. Thanks, y'all, for joining us. Thanks, Anna and Teres, for joining us. And stay. Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation.
Stay tuned. Soon more news about the work and about the way we kind of will integrate it in the King School collection of contemporary art.
Well, thank you so much, Ilya and everyone, for coming. We have about 9 minutes